Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Experiences with Experity. So then we both popped up to you amongst probably hundreds of others, or are you willing to share how many applicants you kind of pushed through to interview stage, or?
Yeah, well, I think I had over 75 viable applications. So obviously you can get loads and sifting out certain criteria.
Yeah.
Um, I knew that there was about 75, and one of the things that I was adamant about is my biggest pet peeve was ghosting, and I was adamant I needed to reply to every single person that had applied, whether they were viable, whether they weren't, whether they were getting an interview, whether they weren't, because I'd seen it done so wrong elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I had templates that I'd built. There was an automatic response to those that didn't qualify initially on the application stage. They would get a response straight away. To those that I was shortlisting, so I had like a two-stage shortlist. So the first one was, I'm open-minded, I've seen their details, I'm going to have a call with them. So I have like an initial screening call with all of the candidates that are at that stage. I can't remember how many I'd shortlisted, but I think it was like nearly 20, because I was so open-minded that I almost gave myself more work, but I thought I
Yeah.
really need to explore as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And I had this like spreadsheet of everybody that I'd shortlisted and when the screening calls were, when the interviews were, and everything else. So there's about 20 that I'd had an initial phone call with. And if it's anything like the length of what I imagine this episode's going to be, I like to talk. Okay, so that was not just, I probably did 30 hours of chatting with people, if not more, just on screening calls alone. You obviously have to organise it, then you get on it, then I'm taking notes, then I go away and follow up. So I then whittled it down to 8 people at second stage interview. I say second stage, the second stage of my journey, which was, I'd like to have a video interview with you.
Yeah.
And obviously you two were part of that. Um, and it kind of progressed from there, really. I don't know if your next question is going to be about sort of setting up for that interview, but we'd gone from 75 down to 20 to then down to 8 really strong candidates at that point.
I was going to ask how you kind of ranking candidates. So something that, not like who was first, but like,
Sounds like we're
how
fishing
we
here. Shiv's like, pick me.
how are we ranking candidates that then got through to interview? Like, I know you said sifting out in that first part, but how are we talking about ranking here?
To be honest, at that screening stage, the biggest thing for me wasn't about their experience, it was about their attitude. So how even their attitude and their values were the two top things that I was basing it off of. So how did they present themselves on the phone? How did they come across? How chatty and engaging were they? Even if they were nervous, that was fine. But if they were friendly and forthcoming, if they were open about their situation, if they didn't feel like they had to say a certain thing, like, when somebody's saying something because they think that's what you want to hear.
The right thing to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted people to be as authentic as possible in that conversation, which is why it was just a phone call, so it was really super relaxed. So that stage was really about just getting to know you, hearing how you come across, hearing how you interact, how you can deal with on the phone, and your attitude and mindset to come and work. Like, what's the story? Where are you at in your life?
Yeah.
What is it that you think this role is going to give you? Because for me, recruitment is a two-way street. As much as I need to check that you're right for the business, I also need to check that we're the right business for you. And that was always something that I stood by even in my recruitment days, is this has to be the right fit both ways. And I was totally okay with not hiring somebody off the back of this process. If the right person was not there, I would not have hired anybody.
Yeah.
And I'd made peace with that before I'd gone into it. So I almost lowered my expectation on, it's okay if somebody's not going to care about the business as much as I care about it. But also, I do want to hear their story and what they want to achieve. And if I can give them, and if I can add to that and if we can both benefit from this relationship. They were the things that I was looking at, really. And yes, I might have asked a couple of questions around, you know, to balance out where you were at on the experience of some of the tasks we were talking about, but I absolutely didn't rank on how qualified you were to do the role, because that didn't matter to me. You know.
Oh, sorry, go on with that.
No, I was just going to say, on that subject, I'd love to know two things, really. Firstly, as a bit of an observation from mine, but I'd love to know your thoughts on CVs. Because one thing that I feel you did, not differently, but actually what a lot of companies don't do anymore, is you stipulated that you wanted the cover letter. And I think I'm right in saying that that's because you wanted to see the personality behind the person rather than the skills of the person. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that side of things as well, because I have thoughts on CVs and stuff like that. So I thought that would be interesting to know.
If I had it my way, CVs wouldn't be a thing anymore. Like, I just feel they're really outdated, and particularly now that AI is coming in. You know, a lot of people are writing their CVs with AI. They all look and sound the same. They all carry the same kind of format. And I suppose it doesn't really tell me about who you are. It just tells me, did you pass your GCSEs? Did you go to university? And, you know, how well can you put some bullet points together in a formatted PDF document? Like, that doesn't actually tell me anything about what you're like as a person. In any job that I've recruited for, either for my own teams in this business or in a previous business, or for clients, the two things that I will read, the first thing is I'll go down to hobbies and interests. I want to know, what's your hobbies? If you have played in a sports team, I know you're competitive, and I know you're a team player, and I know you're driven and committed, and you know you thrive on winning and all of that stuff. They're qualities and things that I love. If you've played a musical instrument, I know you're disciplined, you are creative. If you've done any arts and crafts or drama, I know you're expressive. That tells me that hobbies and interests section of the CV tells me more about you than the other 2.5 pages that you've written with bullet points. So I almost go straight there first. And I remember there's a couple of people specifically for like graduate hire roles, that where you don't have a lot of work experience, you would have loads of CVs that look the same. You know, yes, I got a first class at this, and whatever. And I remember there was one instance, and it was for where you worked at the time, Shiv. It was for someone in your team. And I called up the hiring manager and I was like, look, we've got somebody with absolutely no experience in what you're looking for, but I can tell you hand on heart, like, they are amazing. They are absolutely going to be one of the best people that you hire for the team. And I can tell you that because of this, this, and this. And one of the big things that I picked up on and leveraged after speaking to this person was they played in a football team. They're the captain of a football team, and they played loads of sports: golf, rugby, football. So I knew they loved being part of teams. I knew they were competitive. This was a sales role as well. So that kind of dynamism, ability to kind of go out and win business and do stuff and work together and be resilient are all skills that you would see in a football team or a rugby team, or, you know, in all of those sports that they'd gone and done. And that's so translated to when I picked up the phone and spoke to them. And that little section of the CV told me more about that person that made me pick up the phone for that graduate CV than the thousands of other graduate CVs we'd seen for that role. And that person went in, and I believe is still in that business and has had several promotions and is doing really, really well still. But if you'd have just put the CV in front of that person, in front of the hiring manager, that didn't have the context of how my brain was working off to fill that role, that person would never have got that job. That there's just so many similar CVs, there's so much similar formatting that we use, that it just never translates. And I would, if it were me, I would ditch CVs entirely, and I would just have a cover letter which told me about you, about your story, and even better if it was a video of you chatting.
I was going to say, is there a place for videos now?
I think if we hire the next person, I think that's the way that we're going to go, because firstly, you're going to need to get comfortable getting in front of a camera, being in our team, but secondly, I know for me, I'm much better talking with somebody, articulating myself well, than I would be to write all of my stuff down and big myself up on a bit of paper. That doesn't ring true to who I am, and so why would I expect that of somebody else?
It's such a
So
shame as well, isn't it? Because the qualifications in your that part of the CV is huge. Your hobbies and your interests are like 3 piddly
Tiny.
lines at the bottom.
Yeah.
And you may not even get the chance because the hiring manager is looking so much at the top section of what you qualified in, how many GCSEs you got, and what you got in your degree, and where you went to university, and where you live, and all those things. They don't even reach those parts of your CV, which actually the most vital to get to know you. You're not a piece of paper, you are actually a person. And I actually wholeheartedly agree with you, and I definitely think there's a space for it. Like, don't get me wrong, I think technical jobs, I think vocations and stuff like that, for sure there's a place for it. But I definitely agree with there's got to be a time and a place for it. It depends what type of role you're going into. And can we talk about the interview a little bit? Because it was one of my favourite things. And it lasted for 2.5 hours. And like, we love
just to clarify, that was not the committed time that I asked every person in an interview to commit to. That's just because we like to talk.
That's because we both like to talk. So there was a point where you had given us some prepare. So how did you prepare, and then how did you we can talk about how we prepared, but also you can talk through what you asked of us, and then we can talk about the interview, if that's right.
Yeah. So one of the things that I again did differently was I created like an interview crib sheet for me, but also for every candidate that I was going on to interview. And that's because my biggest mindset was I wanted the candidates to succeed. There's this mentality of when you're interviewing that you need to try and catch people out, and you need to try and call them out on something and challenge and make it as uncomfortable for them as possible to like really pressure test them and stress test them. And I just don't think about recruitment like that. I'm already setting you up to fail before you've even come on board. What does that say about me as a leader? And what does that say about the culture that I'm trying to build as a business? So I wanted to set every candidate that was having an interview up to win. And I felt that having the interview crib sheet explaining the duration of the interview, what was gonna, like, the kind of rough structure of the interview. So I kind of went through, I think, 4 bullet points or 5 bullet points of, we're going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about the business, I'm going to talk about this, we're going to do an interactive task as well, so that I can see how creative you've been and get your thoughts and challenge some stuff. And then you've got an opportunity to go and ask questions and drive your part of the interview off the back of it. So that piece for me was a really valuable asset for 2 reasons. Firstly, because it managed anybody that was nervous about interviews. Nobody loves interviews. Like, some people will say they enjoy it, they don't. There's that nervousness of, I've got to prove myself. I've got to feel like I know something about business, which I've literally just applied for a job. How am I supposed to know the ins and outs of that business? Interviews are done differently to whatever business you go into, and so you don't know what to expect in a lot of cases. So I gave some like information about Experity, some stuff up front, so that people had that information up front, and that they knew that we were going to talk about the story and everything before we got into any interactive stuff. And I wanted people to feel less nervous about what was going to happen. If I could get you as comfortable as possible before coming into the interview process, you're more likely to show up as your more genuine, comfortable, authentic self to that interview. The second reason why I do that is because I want to see how much time and effort you've put into it. I've put loads of time and effort in. I've created the crib sheet. I've set this up. I've given you as much information as possible. What you do with that information will tell me whether you're right for that business. So in some examples, if you hadn't turned up and prepared the interactive task that we'd spoken about, or you'd hashed it together and it was really like poor quality, I would know you've not really spent a lot of time on it. Or if I was to ask you questions about things that were already in that crib sheet and you didn't know the answer to, I would be thinking we haven't even had a chance to read through it. so that was the two reasons. One, to get you as comfortable as possible before coming into the interview so that you could win, you could prepare, you could put your best foot forward. And two, so that I could then see how much attention to detail you'd given to the document itself, and then gone away and made those preparations in advance of coming on.
I had been through, at that point, multiple interviews here, and it was the first one I felt not nervous for. I was definitely like a tiny bit nervous because I felt like, you know, I really want to do well, but also I really want this job, right? That's the feeling you get when you meet somebody and you're like, yeah, this role's for me. But I felt the most comfortable I'd ever felt in an interview. And it didn't actually feel, I don't know if I should say this, it didn't actually feel like an interview. It felt like you were just kind of just chatting about what I had done, and we had spoken a little bit about Experity, and I asked a few questions to you and you were really open, and that in itself I think is why it ended up being 2.5 hours, is because we just had so much to talk about. It was like we hadn't caught up, it's like friends catching up after years, and it was like, oh, so what have you been up to? And that whole conversation helped you build a picture, I think, of where I was at, and I was able to get a picture of where Experity was at. And from the last point I had seen you, it'd been a really long time, so I was able to see how much you had grown too, and that openness for me was like vastly different to anything I'd ever felt. Melissa, how did you feel in that interview stage? Something similar? I'm
very similar, yeah. I mean, I still think I remember the sheet for how many times I read that sheet, like genuinely. I mean, when I've done interviews in the past and stuff, I am that person that will stalk the hiring manager. I'm that person that will stalk the company website. Like, you guys know me by now. I am the person that I would normally dress in the colours of the company very subtly so that they already felt like I was part of the team. Like, I'm a strategist for interviews. Like, I am one of those people, I get nervous for interviews, but I do actually really enjoy the prep up front because I like making sure that I'm as prepared as possible. And the thing for me going into the Experity interview was I felt like I'd really been set up for success. Like, I'd been given so many opportunities within that. I think the activity being one of them, where I could really show my work ethic, what I'm doing, and actually how I can be. And I think that was really valuable to me. And I think both of us with the activity, you asked us to do one or the other, and I think we both ended up doing both because it was like, that's just the type of people we are, I suppose. And yeah, it got me really excited about the business, and I was constantly like, obviously I was following you like Experity before, but I was like stalking every single day. Has Abbie put anything on stories? Has anything more like been updated? Like, what more can I learn about it? I think I went so far down the social media feed that I got to the first post of Experity that they'd ever posted. Like, that's the type of person that I am. So having that extra sheet was so helpful for me because it gave me control. And I think it's really easy to go into an interview and feel like you're out of control and feel like you're going to be put on the spot, and then people aren't performing their best. And I think that's when you're really not going to be able to see that person. And let's be honest, like 90% of roles aren't going to have that type of experience in their role. You're not going to expect you're not going to expect your salesperson to have to go in and like, okay, they're going to have to do pitching and stuff like that, but you're not going to have to expect them on a day-to-day basis to be like hounded with loads of personal questions about themselves. Like, I feel like the interview process really just correlates between the actual role and what the person's going to have to be doing. And I think that's one thing that you did really differently in the interview. Was it wasn't about your strengths and the weaknesses or what animal you'd be if you were an animal. Like, it was actually about tangible things that you could bring to the role, and that really made me feel like I could prove my worth. Whereas with weaknesses and strengths, I'm like, well, how can I prove my worth here? Because actually, no matter what you say, it's either going to sound like I'm brown nosing or like I'm trying to be strategic with my weakness, because let's be honest, we all do. We pick something that's not quite as bad. And yeah, it felt like it flowed a lot better for me.
Definitely.
I think I had like a number of skills and values and attributes that I was ticking off really throughout the questions I was asking, and even just like observing from you. So attention to detail was one, passion, care, collaboration, all of these things were either values that Experity holds. Integrity, obviously our biggest value, and I wanted to give people the opportunity to showcase how they were going about doing that, whether it was in their everyday life. That meant the most to me, about what values did you have, because you can teach somebody how to do a job, but you can't teach someone to be a nice person or to carry a value or an attribute that they just don't have. And for me, particularly with that first hire in the business, I knew I had to be able to get on with them. I knew that they had to share the same values that we wanted for the business. So if they didn't have that, then it was never going to work, no matter how qualified they were for the role. So I think I tackled even just how I scored people on the actual interviews differently as well. So
Yeah.
I'm pleased it came across that way.
I was just gonna say then, so you saw Melissa and I amongst a couple of like 20 others or 15 others. Both of us probably on paper not the most perfect candidates, I would probably say, in terms of both bringing with us a caveat or two each of let's maybe make this work. But you had seen us, you had spoken to us, the interviews that were done. Then what are you thinking? Are you thinking, oh no? Or are you thinking, I'm going to try and make this work?
It was kind of a range of emotions. It was panic, excitement, fear, and just so many different things. Because when I'd got off the phone with both of you, and I was like, oh my god, if she could work for me, that would be amazing. Like, she's wicked, I've seen her in action, like that would be so cool. And then the other one messaged, and I was like, oh my god, I can't actually believe that this is happening. Like, are we serious right now? Like, this is. And I think I kind of knew throughout all of it, I was like, I'm not sure how I'm going to pick between these people. And there was a couple of others as well. There was two others that were really like close to the mark, and I thought they would be amazing in the business. And I was really considering them as well. And I was like, I can't have four people. Like, I want one part-time person. This is just not going to work. But I think what stood out for me with you guys was that you really connected with the story, and I could see the passion in what you were doing, either in a previous business or in a current business, or like the stages. And you were both really open about the stages that you were at in your life and what you needed from the role. And I think, as you quite rightly pointed out, Melissa, a lot of people come in and say what they want, they think the hiring manager wants to hear. And for me, it wasn't about that. It was really about you being as honest and open as possible about where you're at in your life, what support you needed in the role, what your aspirations were for the next 5 years. And not because that meant that I didn't hire you. In fact, I probably have hired two people where we're all at a very similar stage in our lives, all with different needs, different flexibilities. Shiv, you're not even in the same country as us anymore. Being out in Switzerland, that was a difficult thing to navigate in terms of logistical, trying to make sure we're breeding the culture where we're not all able to be together. That piece was really, really hard. And obviously coming from a sales background and a relationship background, and then into this role, I knew that there was going to be a learning curve of us together that would work really well. And then obviously, Melissa, we have had a very upfront conversation about, how it was going to work for you. You've got another business, your own business that you've built from scratch, and I never wanted to take away from your ability to still scale that business. We are limited to the amount of hours that we could have of Melissa's time, because not only have you got the other business, but you've got your ME as well. So I remember being really like conflicted with having the conversations with you, and I instead of just internalizing that with me, I was very upfront with you and said, is coming to work for us something that you definitely want to do, because you've got another passion and another thing, and also you have chronic fatigue and you struggle with your energy levels, and that mattered more to me than, and that was a genuine like concern of mine, was, are you going to have energy to be able to spread it as thinly as you're going to now be doing? Not because I needed to guarantee that you were going to be able to work the hours that I wanted you to work, but actually because I wanted you to thrive. And if that meant that you were pouring that into your own business or it didn't end up working, that was totally fine. And also, we're at a point in our lives where we're moving on, we're scaling, we've got different intentions for the next 5 years with what we're doing in our lives. And that was a consideration, a logistical consideration, but didn't stop me from hiring you guys. And I think, if you looked at it on paper and you looked at actually the reality and the benefit in what we're building now, we would never have been able to scale Experity and build it as we have if A, we hadn't had those upfront conversations and I was aware of it, but B, we actually worked together to plan. So we plan the week so that everybody gets airtime with everyone. We've done resource planning to make sure we're supporting one another. We're working through these things. So they didn't feel like blockers to hiring you guys. It felt like they were important conversations to have up front so that we could all best prepare. And I think what made me respect you guys and end up choosing you guys was the fact that we were all very open and honest about where we were at in our lives and what we wanted to get out of it. And the transparency and the honesty and the respect are values that are complete non-negotiables for me. If I can't trust you, you can't be open and honest with me, and we can't have good communication, then I'm never going to hire you. And I think that's just where it was pipped slightly. So that's really why I ended up, and I just felt like we were on the same values page, just generally. So I thought, we can go on courses, we can train, I can ship stuff out to Switzerland for Shiv, I can, we can balance when we meet up and how we meet up to make sure it works for everybody. And I'm so pleased that we have done that, because the business wouldn't be what it is today if we hadn't have looked at the logistical side of trying to support everybody and not just making you guys fit into what I expected of the business. So we've got a huge amount of value out of having those conversations, I think, and I hoped you guys appreciated the genuine intent of me asking those questions and making sure that it worked for you guys as much as it worked for Experity.
Definitely. And I think setting that thing, like that emotion from the beginning, from that stage of even before we applied, we had those conversations, that's carried in to even to our roles now. We have conversations all the time, and sometimes they're tough conversations between us. We're a growing business and we're a scaling business, and I think you posted about it recently, Abbie, on your LinkedIn. It's about having those conversations and feeling safe enough. And I think the fact that we were able to have those conversations at the stage where actually myself and Shiv, we were trying to impress you, let's be honest, that's what recruitment's about, right? We were trying to impress you. So the fact that we could have those conversations with you even then, I think hopefully meant that you could see that that was going to continue throughout. But also vice versa, the way that you reacted to those conversations and the way that we were able to collaborate on that has meant now that I'm much more open and honest in this journey being on the team. I don't know whether you're the same, Shiv.
I would completely agree with that. I feel like it's just carried through, and that is quite hard for me to do usually. Naturally, I think you guys might have seen initially, I do have my barriers up. I've come from a corporate world where you meet your own number and you just, kind of fight for yourself, or you have to kind of go for yourself. And I really wanted this to be a place where I come in the morning and I enjoy my work, and I can wholeheartedly say that I do. And that is such a big thing for me. And I think you're right, being at this stage of your life, and we were really open with one another as well. And you did a few things differently right in the initial stages, Abbie, that kind of helped us bond. And can we talk a little bit about that? So between that offer and then us actually starting, because obviously start date was kind of, I think, 2 weeks from when, or 3 weeks from when, we were actually all talking already, because you had done a few things. You'd set up a WhatsApp group. Can you kind of talk us through those bits that you wanted to do and why you wanted to do them?